We've got a packed schedule, and we wanted to make sure that we all have enough time and time for questions and discussion. Again, my name is Andrew Allen. I'd like to welcome you to the Experiential webinar series. I'm the Director of Illinois Business Consulting at the University of Illinois, and the purpose of this webinar series today and going forward is to provide us and other universities the opportunity to share experiences, opportunities, successes that are happening at their schools in this area of experiential learning. And for the purpose of today and going forward, when we talk about experiential learning, we're focusing solely on the higher education space and solely on experiential learning as it applies to project-based, client-based experiences. Just to let you know, we have started a LinkedIn group called the Engaged Learning Network. So if you go onto LinkedIn and you do a search under the groups for Engaged Learning Network, you will find us, and we'd love to have you join that group so we can continue these conversations and continue to connect with each other. Just briefly, the purpose and mission of this group, from my perspective here at the University of Illinois and in my conversations with others at other universities, I see more and more interest in applied learning, experiential learning, and it seems that the market is also demanding it. It's not just a good idea, but students are demanding it, and the employers of those students are demanding it. We're seeing it more and more at schools where this is a key part of their college plan or campus plan. And so it makes sense to put together a group of us who are in the thick of this to share best practices and connect with each other. And so that's the purpose of today and going forward. We plan to do 4 to 5 of these webinars per year, and we'll be recording this webinar today, and this will be available after the conversation on the EduSource website. And just so you know, you should get an email immediately following the conclusion of this webinar just with a 5-question survey so that we can think about topics for future webinars. Today we'll be hearing from 4 individuals. First we'll hear from Matthew Lionel. He's the Director of Experiential Learning and Management Consulting at Purdue University. He'll be talking about faculty and institutional engagement. Next, I'll talk about the student piece of experiential learning and how to create leadership and professional development opportunities. Then we'll hear from Roger McCarty. He's the Director of Experiential Learning at Brigham Young University, and he'll talk to us about his experience in institutional buy-in and scalability. And then to wrap it up, we'll hear from David Comisford. He's the founder of EduSource, and he'll share some results of a survey that he conducted with companies who are engaged in some form of experiential learning at universities and some of the insights that came from that. Before we get started, I want to give David a minute to introduce himself and to explain kind of his participation in this group.
Thanks, Andrew. My name is David Comisford, obviously the founder of EduSource. I'm really excited that we can support this community. I talk with a lot of people who run and work in experiential programs, and the question I get asked very often is, what are other schools doing? So, it seems clear there's a need for community and knowledge sharing. So I'm really excited we were able to participate in this and contribute in any way we can. We've created technology to support experiential programs, and to be honest, the only way we can ensure our product is relevant for people like you is to talk with you and learn how your program works. To support that research, I'll be reaching out to those of you I haven't already spoken with, and many of you I have, to learn about your program in the next couple of weeks. So if you have time for that, that would be very helpful. But thank you all very much for joining this webinar. I hope it's helpful.
Thanks, Dave. And I'll just mention before we pass this to Matthew that all of you who are joining today, you'll see on your screen a dialog box in the upper right-hand corner of the screen. We'd love to have your questions come throughout the webinar. Feel free to type those in, and we'll try and address those as we go along. With that, Matthew, we'll pass it off to you.
Okay. All right. Well, thank you, David and Andrew. Let me. I'm just trying to advance the slides. So. Okay, there we go. Is that me?
I may have to help you there, Matthew.
Okay, that's fine. So good afternoon, or perhaps good morning to some of you. I'm Matthew Lionel. I'm a professor in the School of Management at Purdue University and director of our Experiential Learning and Management Consulting program. So in my pre-academic career, I was a management consulting partner with Ernst & Young, which is now part of Capgemini. So I'm going to focus on our course-based experiential programs, and particularly the challenge of getting faculty and institutional buy-in. So the two courses within our experiential learning initiative, which has become known as ELI on Purdue's campus, are management projects and Lean Launchpad. So in the management projects course, your graduate students undertake semester-long consulting engagements for their project sponsors, and whereas Lean Launchpad is an experiential, evidence-based entrepreneurship course based on the customer development methodology developed by Steve Blank out of Stanford University, and we also use this in programs supported by the National Science Foundation and the National Institutes of Health for the commercialization of their funded research. But I'm going to focus mainly on the management projects course as we go forward. So next slide. So when we established ELI, the objectives, of course, began with the students and providing them with the opportunity to internalize and integrate their classroom learning, and also, since we're primarily a STEM, a science, technology, engineering, and mathematics university, to interact with graduate students and faculty from our STEM colleges and schools. As I'm sure you've all experienced, these activities are becoming essential elements of an MBA program, as Andrew mentioned earlier. But we're also finding that STEM graduate students increasingly value these as useful preparation for engineering and scientific roles in industry, as entrepreneurs, and in academia. For the university as a whole, ELI is a vehicle for engagement with our alumni and corporate partners, and also in commercializing Purdue's research and intellectual property. And then fourthly, our corporate partners really view these activities as integral to their talent acquisition programs on campus, as well as an opportunity to participate in the processes for transitioning our research and intellectual property into useful application. So on the next slide, we've just passed our 5th year anniversary for ELI, and we've had some good success with a fairly wide variety of projects, satisfied clients, and involvement of faculty and students across Purdue. However, the mandate for our School of Management is to become better aligned with Purdue's STEM mission and strengths. And so this means transitioning particularly management projects from a management-centric program to one that includes a good portion of interdisciplinary projects in which the business and managerial elements may be supplementary to the issue being addressed. So as an example, a couple of years back, our MBA students conducted a project for a large-scale solar power installation, but they focused purely on the financial model and business case. Whereas right now we have one project underway which has a multidisciplinary team drawn from management, from engineering, and from technology. And they're addressing the technology selection, the design, the configuration, as well as the business case for a solar power generating installation. So this is a broader and really a much richer experience for the student team. So we kind of characterize our transition that we're in the process of going through in 3 stages. So our stage 1, where we started, in which we really had traditional business-oriented projects addressed by MBA teams, and so that's where we started. Stage 2, in which we've got business issues with a technology component, but they're still addressed by MBA teams, but drew on Purdue STEM resources external to the team. And our 3rd stage, which includes business and technology-oriented projects, which are addressed by a fully integrated team of MBA and STEM graduate students. And so we're between kind of stages 2 and 3 right now. Now, Lean Launchpad is a kind of a different beast and a recent introduction, but from day one, and this alternates between developing startups in healthcare and life sciences in the fall and other vertical markets in the spring. And this is targeted at master's and PhD students in STEM disciplines along with MBA students. But I'm going to focus more on the management projects as we go forward. So on the next slide, the engagement of faculty, for both management projects and Lean Launchpad, we found that attracting students and forming teams across campus has been very time-consuming and resource-intensive. So EduSource's software platform is going to help us greatly in managing the logistics of a campus-wide program connecting students, sponsors, and projects. But the challenge I'd like to touch on for the balance of my presentation is getting the rest of the campus on board, the faculty and their academic homes. Actually, sometimes it feels more like castles rather than homes, complete with unscalable walls and moats and cauldrons of boiling oil, but that may be just us. So in our STEM colleges and schools, we have over 1,000 tenured and tenure-track faculty who direct the research and course requirements of our graduate students. And so over the past few years, we've developed quite a few individual champions amongst the STEM faculty. These are the early adopters who are flexible enough to give their graduate students sufficient latitude to participate in both management projects and Lean Launchpad. But we feel that a sustained and scalable program really requires the institutional support of their academic homes. So next slide. So engaged faculty is essential, and we're getting to understand their research areas, their course content and curricula to help identify projects and leverage the knowledge and capabilities that our graduate students are acquiring. And so we count on them to promote ELI to students and colleagues, advise the students' teams both formally and informally when approached, and helping the students draw upon the concepts and tools and frameworks that they've learned in class. And in particular, their involvement in project development is essential, particularly if we're to provide projects where the core solution is technology-oriented as opposed to just within the business and management discipline. And then we need the senior faculty to work with us and their school's graduate committees to have both the management projects course and the Lean Launchpad courses included in the graduate program plan of study. So on the next slide, I've listed the faculty selling points, and I'm sure most of these are common to the programs in your institutions. I think the greatest challenge that we're encountering right now is inclusion into each STEM course curriculum or the formal plan of study for graduate students. So our engineering program, for example, has a long history, and courses have accumulated over time to form a very crowded curriculum. And old courses don't die, they just fade away, but they stay on the books. So actually we still have some courses taught by deceased faculty, which presents some grading problems. So there's a fair amount of pushback due to the perceived dilutive effect of adding a 3 to 4 credit course to the existing curriculum. And then another challenge is addressing the quantitative and technical content criteria for STEM courses. So for management projects, aside from attention to project scope and deliverables, we incorporate a more rigorous hypothesis-based methodology and bi-weekly content classes on subjects such as consulting methods, problem solving, primary and secondary data collection and analysis, project management, presenting, storytelling, team development, and so on. On the next slide, this diagram kind of illustrates the long road to broad faculty buy-in. While we could rely on focusing on the receptive and early adopters and build from there, we feel this is too slow for our purpose, and we want to accelerate the process. And while this process is never as clean and linear as this chart might suggest, I do find it helpful in keeping in mind the stages that each individual and organizational unit needs to progress through, And like Elizabeth Kubler-Ross's well-known stages of grief, this is seldom a one-way journey, and each stage may need to be revisited several times before we actually get people to that institutionalization stage. So on the next chart, as a managed process, the tracking is important, and this just illustrates on a sort of high-level basis, and probably overly optimistic in some areas, but I think we're quite pleased with the progress that we've had to date, and we're very excited to see the gradual transition from a management-centric to a university-wide initiative. So that concludes my presentation, and so if there are any questions that have come up, I'm happy to take those right now, David.
Matthew, one question that was asked was, you mentioned integrating existing faculty course or experiential projects, and I assume you mean into the ELI, but the question is, how do you treat that? Did you take existing pieces and integrate them into the ELI, or did they continue outside of the ELI?
Well, the two things with respect to courses. One is, as we've dealt with each of the STEM schools, is getting a good understanding of their curriculum, so we understand the content that the students are walking away with, and then using those to shape the scope and deliverables of the project so that they can leverage that knowledge. The other side of it is we're trying to encourage as many faculty, both in the School of Management and elsewhere, to incorporate experiential activities in their existing courses. So maybe there's a project component or some interaction engagement with industry. And so supporting their efforts, since we've a focal point for many of the connections with industry and have some reasonable experience in terms of identifying and scoping projects, as well as integrating them into courses, just really help accelerate and smooth the process for faculty that want to do that.
Matthew, we have time for one more question, and it is, what level of support do you have from senior university administration?
Yeah, great question. A lot of support. In fact, it's easier getting the senior administration support than it is for faculty. Faculty are very attached to their own particular areas and turfs, whereas the administration certainly has an ability to stand back and look at the overall program, and so from whether it's the deans of the schools or other more senior administration, they clearly recognize the importance of this activity, and in our case, in particular, the importance of shifting it to be more of a university-wide program where we can bring together students from disciplines to work together. So I've never had any difficulty at the senior level, but also recognize that in a university environment, even deans have limited ability to actually get faculty to change their behavior. So we still have to work with individual faculty, but it's nice to know that we have the backup and support of the senior administration.
We had another question come in. It looks like we don't have time for it right now, but we should have time at the end to address it.
Okie dokie. Thank you.
All right. Thank you, Matthew. This is Andrew Allen from the University of Illinois. I'll be talking about the student piece, so the student side of this experiential learning. Just a quick overview of our program. It's called Illinois Business Consulting, referred to as IBC, not the root beer, but Illinois Business Consulting. We are a fairly large program, and I found when I've looked at other schools, most experiential learning programs either fall into a course-based model or often a student club model, and ours is somewhat of a hybrid in the sense that it's mostly student-run, and they have a lot of ownership over the program, but we're actually a unit within our dean's office in the College of Business. So we have 4 full-time staff. We spend 100% of our time in Illinois Business Consulting. We have office space and resources and that sort of thing. We have about 270 students in our program, and it's an interdisciplinary program, so the students come from all over campus. It's a selective and competitive program, and we conduct about 70 projects per year during the fall and spring semesters, and you can see in that pie chart the types of projects that we address. In our organization, we talk about IBC as a leadership lab or as a professional development program. The consulting side of that is really the means to the end. It's the vehicle that allows us to give these opportunities to students. And we don't always tell students that because we want them to feel the pressure of the project from the client, which they do. But definitely with our leaders, we talk a lot about this perspective, and it changes how we shape our program and how we interact with our students. There are three areas that we really focus on in terms of student engagement and what leads to professional development for them. That's the selectivity and ongoing evaluation, our promotion process and leadership opportunities, and then other forms of professional development. So the first of those, selectivity and evaluations. IBC, we select 1 out of 5, roughly 1 out of 5 applicants, and students, once they get into the program, they can stay multiple semesters, so the pool to get in is even smaller. And so we receive roughly 900 applications a year, and interestingly enough, the process of getting into IBC is through, it's kind of a 3-step process, and our student leaders facilitate all of that. As an example, in our fall semester we had somewhere over 500 applicants, and our leadership team of 12 or 13 students, they conducted 400 interviews in the course of about 10 days. And so the opportunity they get then is that when they're sitting with a recruiter on a job interview, they can say, I've sat in your shoes before, and I know how it feels. So it's selective in nature, and we also conduct evaluations throughout the program. Our student project managers, they'll sit down with each of their consultants on their team and do a one-on-one interview at the beginning of the project and talk about their personal goals and what they're hoping to get out of their experience with IBC. And then we do more formal evaluations like you see on the slide. And the students have actually developed these rubrics and evaluation criteria. And so for the person being evaluated, it forces them obviously to think about where they're at and where they want to be. And then it forces the evaluator, gives them the opportunity to have that experience of evaluating someone. In our case, what is sometimes ironic is that the project manager evaluating the consultant may be a sophomore in engineering evaluating an MBA student with 5 years of work experience. And the dynamic makes it especially interesting and I think applicable to the real world. We're structured like a consulting firm, and our promotion process follows that structure. And what this does is gives the students the incentives to perform well and then obviously have leadership opportunities as they go along. And so within our structure, a project manager manages a team of 6 consultants. A senior manager manages 3 project managers, kind of a train-the-trainer type of a role. And so they're involved with the project and the client, and they especially wear the hat of coach and mentor for their project managers. And again, that type of an experience is really difficult to get anywhere as a student, and so when they're sitting in an interview, the students often tell us when they bring up IBC, that's all that they talk about in their interview, and that's all that the recruiter wants to hear about. I can share a couple experiences that I think the structure has allowed to happen. At the beginning of one semester, we usually have each beginning of the semester we have a kickoff night, and it's a big event in a big auditorium, and we'll have speakers and so on, and we track attendance on who comes. And one senior manager noticed that one of the consultants had not showed up to that meeting. This was an undergraduate, and the consultant who had not showed up was an MBA student with some work experience behind him. And the undergraduate manager sent an email, and it wasn't intended to be harsh, but it came across as a little bit arrogant and forceful, asking why they had not come and do they really want to stay in IBC. And this was the first night of the program. And I saw these emails start to fly, and I was copied in the middle, and it provided a great opportunity for us to talk about leadership and communication. We had another experience where a project manager was literally on the verge of a nervous breakdown. The pressure of the project, he said that his parents were worried about his health, his grades were failing, and he was having a really rough time, and his senior manager took him out to eat or grab a drink and had a one-on-one conversation. They came and talked to me and made a couple changes, and through that process he came out of his next team meeting floating and incredibly happy with what was happening and what had changed on the team. And this is an experience that is hard to replicate, and also it'll be hard for him to forget. We also provide other forms of professional development. So we do lunch and learns with alumni or staff. We do faculty training on specific content that might be critical for a project. We do boot camps. We've started a leadership academy. We'll take our project managers through the Franklin Covey 7 Habits of Highly Effective People course. And we bring in alumni as guest speakers and guests at our lunches, and we do forums where our project managers can talk to each other and share their experiences. And all of this, again, is aimed at that end goal, the end mission of developing the student, and the project is the means to that end. We have tried to measure the impact that we're making, and one thing we found as we did a study is that our students, this was a study of our undergrad students, on average their starting salary is higher than their peers here on our campus. It's also higher than the national average. And we also found, looking at some of our alumni, that they get promoted faster in their jobs than their peers. And we thought that was an especially exciting indicator of the success of the program. That's our goal, is to help students get jobs, but especially to do well in those jobs. And as you can see in this quote, this was one of our students that his manager was open enough to tell him that the primary reason for hiring him was because of his experience in IBC. And we just hear dozens and dozens of this anecdotal evidence that we're delivering on the mission, and that's where we try and stay focused, is that student development piece. So that covers it for my area, and we have, I think, a minute or two for questions.
Hi, Andrew. The question that came in is, how would you run your program differently if it were required for students, meaning you couldn't turn students down?
That's a great question. It'd have to be a lot bigger. You know, I've talked to students that have been both in IBC and also have done kind of project-based courses, and I've asked them, how does this compare, the experience in IBC versus the class project? And there's a lot of differences. It's kind of comparing apples to oranges, but one reason the experience is so effective, so fantastic for the students, is just the caliber of students that come into the room, into the program. You think of companies that choose universities to hire from. They choose this or that university, and they determine they're going to hire 50 people every year from that university, and that's solely based on the fact that they know what type of students that get into that program. And so, you know, the question has come up, are we too selective? I think we'll always be at least this selective, and we like that because it creates a better experience for our students, and hopefully a better impact for the companies that we're trying to interact with as well.
Okay, that's time for this segment.
Sure. So we'll now pass it off to Roger. Roger, are you there? Are you muted?
Yes, I was muted. I apologize. You guys missed a brilliant introduction. But I'm the Director of Experiential Learning at Brigham Young University. And I run programs similar to the two that we just heard with some differences, and I think there's some value in talking about that. I don't seem to have the ability to make a change here, Andrew. Can you either?
Yeah, I'll pass you off here.
There, oh, so okay, now we're going good. All right, so we have an MBA program called Field Studies, which is very much a consulting program similar to what you heard from Eli and some of the elements associated with the Illinois Business Consulting Group. We also started about the MBA program, the Field Studies have been going for at least 30 years. I don't know exactly how far it goes back, but it's been around a long time. I came here 7.5 years ago to run that program, and I was concerned that we didn't have an undergraduate program, and so about 5 years ago we started the on-campus internship program. So we're going to talk a little bit about that. And so why do we have this on-campus internship? I'm going to explain more what it is. But for BYU, we're about 640 miles from a major employment center. There's over 70,000 college students in this little valley that we set in. But there's probably less than 2,000 internships in the whole county that are of a professional level. And students need to have 3 to 5 professional experiences. I worked at Dow Chemical for 30 years before I retired and came here to run this program. And I interviewed students on campus. I also interviewed students from major colleges all over the United States that came back to our company headquarters. And as we did that, we saw that they would have 3 to 5 professional work experiences. But most of these people would be going 5 or 10 or 20 minutes off campus to do that. But BYU is 640 miles from a major employment center. But we have alumni all over the world. So we began to look at this question of how could we get more internships? And so we began to ask our recruiting partners, can you do more summer internships? And they said, well, we only have so much bandwidth. We can't just do them forever. Well, could you do them in the fall or the winter? Well, we don't have a budget for the fall or the winter. And so we'd say, could you find something for unpaid internships to do in the winter or the fall? You didn't have to pay for them. Could you find something for them to do? And they said, well, yeah, I'm not a loser. I got stuff that needs to be done. Well, what if they could be virtual? Instead of taking up your desk and computer and phone, what if they stayed on campus and worked virtually for you? You know how to do virtual, don't you? Most of them said, yeah, we know, we do lots of virtual, so we could do virtual. And I said, well, what if the student had 5 heads instead of 1? What if it was 5 students working as a team to do this internship that you want done, this project that you want done, instead of 1? And most of them said, you know, that would even be better. So that was the genesis of the on-campus internship. And since then, we've had over 450 companies in the last 5 or 6 years that have done on-campus internships. And these are just an example, but it's anything from a startup company to a small local to we've done projects in Accra, Ghana, Lima, Peru, Shanghai, Switzerland, small companies, big companies. These are examples showing here of some that we do. This is the growth. You can see we started with 5 projects and 23 students back in the fall of 2008. And we have about 650, 670 students this semester. The light blue color at the bottom of the chart, that's what we call our general business. And that is about half of the students in the program are in this general business. And we do any kind of project in any kind of business. The red here is financial, and it's a capital markets academy working with Beneficial Life doing bond analysis, or with Merrill Lynch or JP Morgan, with private equity companies, very specialized. We did a number of translation projects. The businessman, the dark blue is a strategy section. The dark blue near the top is social entrepreneurship. So we have a number of different kind of specialty classes which do projects of a very special nature, and we have some people involved in those that really help. This is an undergraduate-only program. We've done over 4,000 students since 2009. We take students from all over campus. More than 50% of our students come from outside the business school. Now, unlike the IBC, we accept 100% of the students. Now, why do we do that? This isn't about exclusivity, and it's not about creating a brand recognition. This is about sheer mass, increase the number of internship opportunities that students have. This is all about increasing. Now, many of the students have done this class 2, 3, 4, 5 times during their college career to give them a number of different experiences in different types of projects and in different kind of companies that they're working with. But this is really about sheer volume of making sure that students have a chance to have an internship experience because of our geographic limitations. As I said, we have the 1 general class and 7 specialty ones. In the MBA program, which is separate from this, we do an average of about 125 students per year doing much more like the ELI plan is or the consulting program. Now, the question is, how do you grow exponentially? And how do you become viral? Well, so a couple of things. One is you have to dramatically increase the number of projects available where students can participate. I'm going to tell you that I turn down 25 to 30 projects a semester because we don't have enough students to fill all the projects. At this point, we've never turned a student down that wants to do an internship. And so I'm going to talk a little bit more about number 1, but let me just mention the other elements. Number 2 is you really need to have some standardized processes involved in administering the program. This can become a nightmare with all of the administrative elements. I don't have anybody else that works in this program. I run all of the administrative elements of the program. We do have a couple of people who will help out in some of the sections to kind of advise some of the project areas. But basically this is a one-person concept. And so having standardized processes and computerized systems that manage a number of the elements, having a lot of student resources is really the only way we can make this happen. Developing processes to assure a minimum level of quality of project completion. We have a 6-step program where we have 6 classes that we hold during the semester, but most of everything that we do just goes forward with the students working with just some of this background resources for quality. And part of the quality is the student project, or the student, we call them mentor TAs, who have 10 to 15 projects each, that they are past experienced team leaders that now go out and mentor the teams that are out there, and when they have problems they can't handle, they bring them to me. I'm going to take just a minute to play this video, and this is on the front page of the website that companies see. We also have a similar one for students. Whoops.
Welcome to the on-campus internship website. Thank you for visiting. Our program offers a wonderful opportunity for you and your organization, for the students here at Brigham Young University, and for BYU and the Marriott School of Management. So what is an on-campus internship? It's kind of like a summer internship with a few small differences. In a summer internship, a company hires a student to come to their office, sometimes close by and sometimes far away, and work with them full-time for the summer. The student will complete professional work that is valuable for them and the company. BYU students are some of the brightest in the world. However, some students have limited work experience, which can be a concern for recruiters. BYU students need many more internships than are currently available. But most companies cannot take more students during the summer and cannot afford to hire interns during winter or fall semester. An on-campus internship solves these problems by offering internships during fall and winter semesters when companies have time to work with additional student interns, providing 40 hours per week of work for an entire 15-week semester without charging a company for the hours. Student interns remain on campus, meaning that they do not have a company desk, phone, or computer, do not have to move from their apartment, spouse, or campus, and have access to all of the BYU library databases needed for research. OCI projects are valuable to everyone involved because the company receives valuable work from enthusiastic student interns. 5 interns, each working 9 hours per week instead of a single intern. Fresh insights from students trained in the latest principles and approaches. A 15-week interview with students interested in their company and industry, and significant publicity and word-of-mouth PR before, during, and after the project. And students receive 3 hours of college credit for the experience, a real-world experience in the area of their studies, a fabulous resume builder focused on their future career, interaction with experienced company contacts in their chosen field who may recommend or hire them, an opportunity to solve problems with the tools they are learning, teamwork skills in a real-world setting, and develop attributes that matter most to recruiters. Interested? Great. You can learn more about our program and submit an application by visiting marriottSchool.byu.edu/fieldstudies/internships. That's it. It's that easy. If you would like to speak to someone directly, you can call the Director of Experiential Learning at 801-422-8928.
So that's the video. Let me just take one more minute to just describe when companies come out, that's the video that they see. And here are what I'm calling the 5 steps that get you to industry scalability. You start with your fans. Get the people who are your recruiters, your alumni, the people who like the school, could be locals if that makes sense for you. But start with your fans, and we have found that it's become viral. That it goes, they tell their friends, and it really goes fast. Create win-win-win relationships. This is a win for the students who get the experience. It's a win for the companies who get valuable work and get to see, from a recruiting standpoint, additional students. And it's a win for the school that increases their placement and the quality that happens in their classroom because these students have greater learning and understanding to bring into the classroom to enhance their learning. We try and upgrade from tasks to decisions or actions. Companies tend to send us a group of projects that are just tasks, just individual grunt work. And what we try and do is say, what are you trying to get at? What's your real decision? What's the action that you're trying to take as a company? And how can we help you accomplish that? Instead of just doing random tasks, we try and become an integrated part of their decision-making process. You need to speak the language of companies. We use Barbara Minto's pyramid principle to give top-level executive presentation style instead of a traditional academic bottom-up presentation. And monetize your partners. Learn how to get referrals and testimonials, how to get them to spread their projects out to research and to engineering and to other things other than a traditional market study or something. And really kind of increase how much value you get from each company. So these are some ideas, and there's a lot more that we do behind this to try and scale this on a very high level. Do we have time for any questions?
Yeah, we have a little bit of time. One question came in. Do you find these internships yourself, or are faculty also recruiting?
This is not a faculty-driven process. Even though this is a class, and the students do get 3 credits for this, I will get, maybe 1 or 2 or 3 projects a year that came from some contact with the faculty. But in essence, faculty really have very little that they're involved in creating projects. We get much more through our alumni organizations, and significantly from our recruiting partners. That's, I would say, alumni and recruiting partners represent probably 80% of the projects that we have. and I do have to say, and referrals for them, because we do get lots and lots of referrals.
The next question is, who handles the scoping of projects?
That's a great question, and I think it's a critical question. One of the things I learned in my experience in my career was almost all projects come in poorly scoped. They're looking at the wrong things, they have the wrong breadth, the wrong depth, and they're not really going after the key elements of what needs to be done. I thought that early on I tried to scope some of these things for the students. I know how to do it, and I can do it quickly and effectively, but I realized I was taking about 50% of the learning of the class away from them if I did the scoping. So what we do instead is we have a 2 or 3 step process that we take the students through and teach them how to scope, teach them how to create an engagement letter, teach them how to negotiate the deliverables that go to the company, and we teach them how to upgrade them from tasks to decisions, and we have the students do the scoping. Now, our TAs, they review all of the engagement letters and the scope and breadth, and if they see a problem, they'll talk to the team. If the mentors can't handle it, then they bring me in. But I get brought in very seldom. On the 150 or so projects we do a semester, I probably only get involved in the scoping on 2 or 3 projects.
We just got another question addressed to all of the panelists, so if we have time at the end, we'll run back through that when everybody's able to speak.
Thank you. Then I'm done.
All right. David, we'll pass this off to you.
Thank you, Andrew. My name is David Comisford, as I mentioned before, founder of EduSource. We did a survey about 2 months ago of employers, specifically large companies, medium-sized companies, 1,000 employees and up, all of them for-profit, and I thought some of the results of that survey may be of interest to the folks on this webinar. So what I've heard anecdotally from employers is a major motivation of sponsoring an experiential project, whether it's paid or not, is to be able to recruit those students, right? And this doesn't necessarily apply to startups. It may not apply to nonprofits, but when you're talking about a for-profit, medium-sized or large company, the top of the list whenever I have a conversation with these people is recruitment. And 94% of the people we surveyed identified that recruitment was a key element here. So I bring this up because when I speak with schools, I hear a lot about the total hour output of the students or the overall work being done by the program for these companies, and that's a terrific story. I think another part of that story that maybe isn't told as often is this is a great way, if you're a company, to differentiate between yourself and your competition to be able to recruit students in a way that's personal and in a way that's highly effective. I work with a gentleman who has sponsored projects with 12 different schools over the years, probably some of you who are on this webinar, and his anecdote is we can hire 2 different students from the same college. If one of those students came out of an experiential project, they tend to get promoted much more quickly, they tend to get paid more in the long run, and they tend to be a better asset to the company. That's a very valuable proposition to these companies you're working with. So when you're promoting your program, I would recommend mentioning, if you're not already, that recruitment is a terrific advantage of sponsoring a project with you. And speaking of value, the question I get asked the most is how much are schools charging companies for their projects? And we asked the companies we spoke with who had paid for projects, typically how much are you paying for a project? The weighted average of these numbers is just under $10,000, and that's almost identical to the surveys I've seen done with the MBA programs to show that MBA programs generally charge about $10,000. So that seems to be a typical watermark, especially for graduate level work. The anecdote I hear again over and over from employers is we would actually pay quite a bit more. Now again, we're talking about medium-sized and large businesses. If you work with nonprofits or startups, this is a very different value proposition, and they have very different funding capabilities. But the idea has been you may be able to charge more out of your large employers who are sponsoring projects because in a lot of cases, this project is of significant value to the company as both an employment opportunity and an often effective way to get consulting work done. The next question was, how many of you have sponsored projects at multiple schools as an employer? And I was surprised that so many of the responders had done this at multiple schools. I've noticed that some program directors and faculty can get protective of their client list and maybe don't want to share the clients they're working with their colleague down the hall, which I can understand. I know it's very time-consuming to build these relationships. I know it's a point of pride as a faculty or someone who runs a program that you have a deep relationship with a lot of these companies you work with, and maybe some of them are repeat business. But what we've seen and heard from employers is they're already working with multiple schools, and they tend to want to do more projects, not fewer. So we think, and what we've heard, is if you can hide the complexity of your institution, meaning you may have 4 or 5 different separately managed experiential programs or courses, and an outside employer is going to have a difficult time making sense of all of that. But if you can present to that employer one face, one entry point into your college from which they can submit a project, and then you as a school can receive that project and dole it out internally, as makes sense. That seems to be a better experience for the employer, and from the schools I've spoken with who've done that, they found that overall they can get more projects done.
Thank you, David. This is Andrew again. We wanted to thank everyone for joining us today. We'll remind you about our LinkedIn group. We'd love to have you join the Engaged Learning Network. We have some time for questions. David, do you want to facilitate those?
Yeah, we had several come in, so I'll start at the top. It was a question for, I believe, Matthew. Is the goal to have a large percentage of your project or of your client industry-driven projects, or not necessarily?
Sorry, I missed the end of that, David.
The question was, is a goal to have a large percentage be client and industry-driven projects, or not necessarily? I assume this means a large percentage of your overall curriculum.
I mean, yes. I mean, for the sort of experiential consulting projects, we do have some projects which are where we got internal clients, where we have teams of students working with some of the research labs, developing commercialization plans for their technology. But the bulk of the projects are sort of industry driven, and as I said, we're trying to have more of those projects have technology, science, engineering issues at the core, as opposed to straight management issues. And so there's more opportunity for meaningful involvement of the STEM graduate students, as opposed to just tagging along with the MBA students doing a supply chain or a marketing research project, which is still of value, but we want a mix of projects.
The next question is for Andrew. Do your clients pay for the projects, and if not, have you tried monetizing your program?
Yes. So we charge on a different scale based on the size of the company. So large companies will usually charge anywhere between $10,000 and $20,000 per project, and then we go down from there depending on the size of the company. So we definitely use the revenues to pay for some of the costs of the program.
Okay, the next question was, is there a way to watch the seminar if you joined late? The answer is yes. That'll be posted on the EduSource website, and we'll send out an email as well to let everybody know where to find it. The next question was for all panelists. Can the panelists address to what degree the projects are domestic versus international? Do your teams travel abroad, for example? If so, for how long? So, Andrew, do you want to kick that off?
Sure. So we do about 35 projects per semester, and about 5 to 7 of those are international, and the bulk of those are kind of a program that we help manage, which is our global consulting program, and we do send the MBA. This is an MBA program, and we do send the MBAs to the country for at least a week, where they meet with their clients, do some research, as well as kind of get the global immersion experience in the country. We also do some international projects remotely where the students do not travel.
Matthew, do you want to answer that question as well? Do you want me to repeat it?
Yeah, no, that's fine. So, yeah, as Andrew does, we do have some projects which are international but are delivered locally, and so we connect with the clients virtually. We have a very international student mix, and so have a fair number of projects in China and India as a result of that. The projects that sort of require travel we do during the spring semester, and there are two modes for that. One is that we participate in a global business project program with two other universities, and there are two modes to that. One is where the students travel during the March break, and another where they travel to the client country at the end of the semester between, and this is for first year students, so it would be between the end of the semester and the beginning of their internships. We also have a partner school in Germany where we have students exchanging both ways, and so we have projects located in Europe that are delivered by teams of Purdue students working along with the students from the partner university in Germany. And that's part of their curriculum as well.
At BYU, we have a number of international projects each semester. At the undergraduate level, they don't travel. They do all of these virtually. At the MBA level for field studies, we'll normally have, similar to IBC, we'll normally have 3 to 5 or 7 projects where the students will travel. The company pays for the travel, and they'll travel for about a week. Our kind of agreement with the school is the students won't miss more than 5 consecutive days of class. So if they don't have class on Friday, as an example, they could leave Thursday night and not come back till the next Sunday. But again, the companies pay for this, and our standard fee is about $15,000. But again, if it's a nonprofit or a small company, we'll have some ability to reduce that to match their capability.
Okay, the next question is, what are the considerations for international master's students who cannot work on a self- or employer-selected project that relates to their major? And I wasn't sure who this was addressed to, so I'll just toss this out.
Well, I'll just comment on that quickly. Our international students love our programs because, as I understand, because it is a class and they're getting credit for it. It does not count against their J1 or their F1 visa, their 12 or their 18-month work time capability. And so because it's a class and the work project is part of the class both at the MBA and the undergraduate level, we have lots and lots of international students who participate. And as far as we understand and everything that we've learned tells us that these students can have this show up on their resume, but it doesn't count against their visa or their work time.
We have the same situation at Purdue. Sorry, so we and because we have a fair number of international students, some of those are not, because of the limitations, are not able to take internships between the 2 years, and so we also run a summer experiential program where they're not constrained in terms of interfering with their visa limitations.
We have time, I think, for one last question. It came in a moment ago. What is the funding model for experiential education at your school? Do each of you want to take a crack at that?
I'll touch on that. This is Andrew. So we're fortunate that some of our salaries are paid for by the college, and then we have the revenue from the program to subsidize 1 or 2 other salaries, plus the program costs, all the travel, all the materials, supplies, printing, and all that sort of thing. So it's kind of hybrid. We get some, we're subsidized from the college, and then we're relying more and more, trying to become basically self-sufficient on the revenue of the program.
This is Roger at BYU. When we charge a company, we charge professional fees. That's the $15,000. And if there's any expenses, we ask the company to cover any expenses, including printing or travel or anything else, for both the graduate and the undergraduate level. Because of that, We are totally self-sufficient because there's only one salary associated with it. That's easily done. And we actually give back a couple $100,000 to the university each year in excess of paying for our program.
Yeah, Matthew here at Purdue. So we have a fairly low fee for participants or project sponsors. So at the present it's $2,500, but we're increasing that for this next fall to $5,000. So our salaries associated with the program are covered by the school. So the revenue covers any other expenses associated with the program, and as Roger does, we ask the clients to cover any expenses that are incurred by the students on the project. But we've also established a Purdue Student Consulting, which is we've had a lot of help and support from Andrew and the student leadership at IBC, which is a revenue-generating consulting organization that the students run. And so we're trying to sort of separate our curricular consulting activity from the student-led activity, and that student one will be self-sufficient.
Well, we're at the top of the hour. Thank you again to all of those who have joined us. I hope this is just the beginning. Again, you can find us on the LinkedIn group, and we can make connections there. I have found personally to get a lot of value out of these conversations that I've had with some of you and with Matthew and Roger and others to see what other people are doing. There's a lot of great programs and great examples of how to run these things out there. So we hope we can connect. I wanted to thank David at EduSource for both hosting this webinar. Again, it'll be available on their website as a recording, and also their help with the software platform that we use from them to manage our program. And you should see a survey emailed to you to get some feedback about today's webinar and offer some ideas for topics for our next webinar, which will be scheduled in the next few months. So thank you again to all those who have joined. With that, we'll close out the webinar.